You need a better brother, I think.
We're just gonna start recording, and we'll see.
You ever think we should do start recording? You all once
Hit
again.
record again. Yeah.
You're like an anti-alchemist. You're discarding all the gold. You see gold, you poop on it.
Yeah. When I see gold, I think, how can I turn that into bronze?
I can make that coal,
and then how can I take that bronze and turn it into some sort of raw material?
If I could just reduce it to lapis, I'd be in business.
Yeah. If I could turn it into a smelly old rock, I'd be happier than a cheese wheel on Sunday.
I'd like to transmute something to a lower state.
Yeah. That makes me the devil, doesn't it? I am the embodiment of static order. I am the archaic father. I am rules. I am order. I am orthodoxy. I am.
Yeah, it's really is. So we're just gonna get to this Jordan Peterson thing. Are you recording?
Yeah, we're recording. So let me just preface it. All right. So.
Yeah, because I saw what you said. I was going to write a response, but then you said we're podcasting.
These are not responses. Yeah, these are the things that I want to talk about, which I say.
Right.
Yeah. So, Dave, my brother, and I have both read a book by Jordan Peterson. I don't think either of us have read the other book by Jordan Peterson. 12
no,
Rules
not
for
12
Life.
Rules. That's the one. People would watch this if we'd watch that.
But that's sort of like the Diet Coke of this book. This book is.
I mean, probably more so.
It is dense, and it's not particularly fun to read or listen to. It's pretty heavy. It's pretty heavy. I mean, it's not.
The only parts that I thought were heavy were probably the first third, or maybe even the first half, where he's going into the scientific nitty gritty of basically he's doing the empirical part, like the research.
The groundwork.
That was the boring part.
He had to lay the groundwork, though. That's the groundwork.
Right.
That's where he transcends Jung, right? That's his contribution. Otherwise, he could have just said, read page 35 of this book from Jung. You know what I mean? He's really citing Jung.
Go into, because I still have them on text here, but I'm sure you have them there too. So maybe we should break this up.
So I have some quotes. I have some questions. But yeah, just to preface it, we both read this book. It's called Maps of Meaning. It's a book.
Well, we audiobooked it. I don't know. Does that count as reading?
Yeah, I count it as reading. I get prickly when people say it's not. I mean, if you receive the information and you understand it and you comprehend it, it's reading.
Yeah, I might get more out of it this way.
I think my comprehension listening now
the internet's
is higher than
in my mind. So yeah, I need some audio.
It didn't used to be that way. I started out, I would have to listen to every book 3 times to really get it. But now I'm able to get it usually with once at about the same level as I would if I were reading it with my eyeballs. So yeah, this book Jordan Peterson wrote over a period of, I think, 10 years or more. He wrote it over a very long period of time as an exercise in something about himself that disturbed him, which is his capacity for evil, and he started having these dreams.
Yeah, I finished it, and then I re-listened to the first hour and minutes today.
Idea. So the beginning is the reason that he wrote it.
He starts out saying he was born in a Christian household. He was kind of raised under that umbrella. He eventually just came up against the very reasonable stupidities anyone would run into, like these things don't seem to be literally true. And from there, he just kind of threw the whole thing away, and he got into political ideology instead. That took the place of whatever he thought he had before was. I mean, he had that. Yeah. His upbringing, that was his backbone, his Christian upbringing. Then he went into socialism, basically.
Yeah.
And then he realized that the socialism as an ideology was just as bullshit as Christianity was when he was being raised.
Let's say, importantly, why was, he said the reason why was because that it focused on the wrongs of others rather than the rights of us. Right? That was the main point.
Well, yeah, he found that Christian religious principles didn't seem to be true kind of superficially.
Yeah.
And then he moved into political ideology, and he found those didn't seem to be true practically,
right.
Because the people that purported to believe them didn't act as if they did, and they certainly didn't carry out in the world what they said the belief would
do.
They
were acting out as a normal human would, with selfish needs and drives that would maybe compel someone to be a good capitalist,
right.
and they proclaimed
socialism. Yeah, just trying to like describe the beginning of the book for people that haven't read it though. So he's like, strike one was his basic introduction to religion. Strike two was his introduction to ideology, and so he found himself at a place where religion and ideology didn't give him any sense.
And he got disillusioned with both. One sort of in sequence, but for different reasons. One, because it's obviously not true, because how could someone believe that that's true? Two, because these people are all frauds. They don't actually act out what they believe, and this is all just about scapegoating.
Right.
It's not about...
So then, so three, he's left in a place where he then, because he has these two experiences, he is led to a place where he can't even trust his own words or his own mouth. He usually likes to talk. He ceases to be able to talk. He starts having these bad dreams or whatever. He just ceases to be a functioning person because he realizes that none of the things that he thinks are things that he actually believes or knows for certain. So he's like stuck in that no man's land of whatever, like he says with Tolstoy. And
he starts to feel like everything that's coming out of his mouth came from somebody else, and there's a little voice inside of his head that says you're lying after he says every single thing. And then he starts having dreams of the world ending.
Why is it not true?
Yeah.
Why is that? Yeah.
Every time I read anything about Jordan Peterson now or anything, I just read it in that voice because I've heard it way too much now. He reads it well. I mean, it's
I had a little. I mean, well, not to get too far off topic. I mean, we'll probably get into this as we go on.
I have some critiques, so we can get into that for sure.
Yeah. So maybe we should just stick with the introduction. But okay, let's just talk about Jordan Peterson reading this book.
Yeah.
It's a problem because people have become so acquainted. I almost feel like the book is unrecommendable because people are so acquainted with Jordan Peterson now in popular culture that they already have an opinion on him, and they're not going to. Like, maybe we should just save that for later. Save that for the end.
Yeah, I don't necessarily agree with that though, because you can't seriously and honestly read that much of someone's work and then still have the impression of them that you had before.
You can't. I'm talking about more like people won't even start to read it or give it a chance because they'll say, "Oh, Jordan Peterson."
Fair. But I mean, any time I've read anything of someone, even someone I don't agree with, at least I feel like I understand them better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you actually read it, if you actually get into it, and I certainly have problems with this book. This is not going to be just a glowing.
Conversation.
Let's praise Jordan Peterson. I have issues, plenty of issues, and plenty of good. It's a very good, interesting book. I'm very glad I read it.
Yeah, I think I'm going to try to. I mean, because I like I said, I use it like when I'm exercising because it was just you don't have time much to read books, even audiobooks. So it was like a thing. Like every time I press start on my like little running app, I would just press play on the Jordan Peterson book and just run and listen. And I got into this place where like. I don't know. It doesn't even feel right to exercise without hearing Jordan Peterson harp on about.
Yeah, you gotta keep running. Don't give up. You're about to hit your 1,000 step limit.
It was very interesting. But anyway, maybe we should just go back to the beginning. You might have to edit this stuff.
But this is good groundwork. So that's that's what we did. And I like this project, by the way. I think the idea of reading something kind of simultaneously and then talking about it is cool. So we'll see how the conversation.
It really is, yeah. So he gets to that place where he starts, he ends up realizing he doesn't even know himself, basically, because he realizes he doesn't even know what he thinks, or even he realizes what he did think was garbage.
Or at least recycled without, it's sort of a piece of pass-through for the opinions. He's just an
not
empty
garbage. It was
tube.
more like...
He's a tube and it's just passing through his mouth, basically.
He didn't know why he believed what he believed before. And he was basically reactionary. Right.
Garbage is a value statement. It's not a value statement. It's just
correct. So I was wrong to say that.
Yeah.
So once he comes upon this like precipice, when he's looking at nothingness, he starts having these weird dreams about what things mean. He's very concerned with the possibility of nuclear annihilation. Then he's looking back at history. What history has led us to this nuclear annihilation, and he sees even more tragedy, the 20th century, the Nazis and like Stalin and all that stuff. So he just
Stalin,
well, I mean, and Nazis too. I think.
Well, the Gulag is more the focus of the atrocity, but
it is. But I think at one point he says it's basically the same as the Gulag, but he says every human being has the capability within them to be a Nazi, a normal person. not just a bad person or a person in trouble.
So I think you laid out the groundwork pretty well. As far as a reading list, if someone wants to get into this, and I've read some of it but not all of it, would be the Gulag Archipelago by Solzhenitsyn. It would be the works of Carl Jung. It would be Nietzsche, and it would probably be who else would it be? Eliade, Mircea Eliade, who's Spanish. I can't remember exactly where he's from. I think he's Spanish, and he was he focused on things like alchemy and the myth of the eternal return and the flat circle, the idea that repeat. I want to read Eliade. He's my next person to dive into.
That's what with the Ouroboros,
he's
dragon,
the very same.
Yeah.
I'm very interested in reading more of Eliade, and I tried to buy the. I was about to buy the Gulag Archipelago once, and then it came off of the market. Archipelago, and then it came off of the marketplace. They removed it from Audible.
Really?
Yeah. A couple months ago. It was in my wish list for a long time.
Removed it from what? From Amazon?
Yeah, from Audible. So I think maybe I'm assuming there was an issue with the.
Well, you can get the. Yeah. So you want audio?
It's on YouTube.
You can
for
get
free.
the physical version from McDougal Douglas or whatever down in the village. Not village. I'm sorry, Soho.
I think.
Because I bought the first copy unabridged. I didn't read the whole thing. I read like half of it, and then I started skimming, and I just got distracted, which is why I don't read regular books. But it was good so far. I think it gets more tragedy in the second and third edition.
I want to listen to it.
Volume.
For sure. Yeah, it's on YouTube, so I might just listen on YouTube. I think they had issues with the recording or something, so they pulled it. I don't know. I hope they didn't pull it for political reasons. That would be bad.
They would, but no. Not enough people are going to go read that they would do that, but.
Okay, so.
But anyway, he starts making his case. Then from there, he starts wading into, not an answer to the problem, but like the moral, like what caused his question. Because I don't think that the whole book actually has an answer.
No, it doesn't. It's the beginning.
He doesn't recommend an answer.
Yeah. No, but that's the interesting thing about it. But let's start. That's actually what I want to start with, which is the thing that he's trying to tackle. And maybe I can say part of it, and you can say what you think it is, because there isn't a clear answer. But I think it starts pointing at things that people might then work on. I think the thing that he's trying to tackle, I would say, the primary statement is that the source of human progress is the individual who both has grown up in culture that is not new culture, but culture that is in tradition as we think of it, but also doesn't just in an orthodox way, in a sort of strict way, stick to the culture, is able to sort of foray out into the forest of the unknown and pull from the unknown the innovations that are necessary to move humanity forward. And any time you go off of the knife edge, terrible things happen. And he goes into, if you're too strictly adhere to culture, then bad things happen. If you're in chaos, bad things happen. But
I would say it's a little more specific.
But that's the main thrust of thrust of it.
Well, I think the whole point of his book was the argument that good and evil literally exist. People have been sorting out how they deal with this through using myths at first. Human beings are basically mythologically driven creatures, and we all have an aspect in which we treat things that is, in one sense, empirical and that it is measurable. In another sense, it's an actionable thing with a entirely separate context to it. So it's he was trying to say that good and evil exist, and humans that rely only on empiricism are missing out. Human beings are inherently mythologically driven, so if they only go towards empiricism, they're misreading anything they could gain from the known and the unknown. Because human beings have always had to go into the unknown and make it the known in order to progress. But human beings, being mythologically driven creatures, relying only on empiricism, instead of myth as well are going to suffer, and that's because good and evil is true. And he tries to paint that like historically, and I don't know. That's what I would say. Mostly, what I said about like objects, like he makes that great example in the beginning about the child that reaches for something on a countertop. It's like a certain thing,
Yeah.
and the mother slaps her hand away and says no. The object has an empirical value, of course. It's measurable. It has a certain weight, a density, a location, but it also has a significance of meaning, in between human beings, socially.
It's called the motivational significance of things.
Yeah, motivational significance or actionable significance,
in the form of action. Motivational significance in the form of action.
Which is what's so great about the book that was kind of enlightening to me was that he mentions that mythologically oriented cultures consider objects on their actionable qualities. The world is a forum of action. Yeah.
That was the thing that also sort of threw up a light bulb that I hadn't, and I think that's the primary value of the book, because otherwise it's very similar. It's something I want to mention later. It's kind of a darker, more in-depth mirror of The Hero with a Thousand Faces, to be honest.
Yeah, I haven't read that, but yeah.
It is a sort of dark mirror image of that, because it follows the same, because the proposition about the thing that I mentioned about the person who goes into the unknown, that's kind of similar. But the thing that he really, I think, brings to it is the idea that there is this, here is the empirical world, the place of things as objects that are with measurable quantities. And then above that, in the landscape where we actually evolved, which includes our culture, which includes our behavior, this is the place where we actually live. Because we don't live in our lives are not based on how much does it weigh? Our lives are not based on empirically understanding. We do that as a scientific exercise, and he doesn't necessarily say that that's a bad thing, because that's a tool in a way.
Yeah,
but he doesn't focus on
that. That's what gets us to space.
That's what gets us to space. That's one of the things.
He does say, like, he gives that value. But anyway, go on.
He gives it its due, absolutely.
Yeah.
But he wants to say that we're, as you said, we're human beings, and we just like, other animals they evolved in a certain way to be a certain way, to behave in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
Us too. We can't just sort of slice ourselves off and say, okay, we have science, we're empirical beings now. It doesn't work like that. We have for our entire evolution, we have sort of built up this sedimentary layer of concepts that are buried deep.
That's the book, the maps of meaning.
Right.
Like, how do we map out this meaning?
And it exists around us in a way that is almost physical, at least mentally physical, and the each thing has a certain valence based on its meaning to us, its motivational significance, and that if we do reach for a thing, or we strive for a thing, or we move toward a thing in purpose, there's a sort of way in which that either is good or evil, and I think that's the thing that he brings to the book, the idea.
Which is, it is huge. Like, it's something that people should consider, because
absolutely
I think we've argued about that before, but I haven't ever been able to put it that way. People don't live on empirical values. That, like you said, they live on meaning, even whether they know it or not. They're going for some sort of meaning. Like, that drives everything. It's always the why, not the how.
Right. Well, I've never disagreed with you on that point. Yeah. We just always agree on another. We're on two different levels. I always say what is actually true in the universe. I still say that in terms of being in the universe, it doesn't matter in any sense. But as a human being, when we're talking about the context of humanity, yes, we have to talk about the motivational significance of action. Why are we taking the action? What are we moving toward? And the example that really stuck out to me from the book was that the past is sort of telescoped. I think it's a perfect word. Myth is the thing that sort of telescopes all of past knowledge into this thing that's around you, into this landscape. And it's telescoped because it has those many, many layers, right? It's not every single detail of the past, but it's the most important stuff that's been carried through the generations, that as a child you grow up and you play within it, and your play is sort of acting out those old ideas, and that's how you learn it.
What did you think about his assertion that like he said something like this along the lines with Sam Harris before, like Sam Harris is Christian whether he's atheist or not or something, because he lives in a Christian culture and he's living with that meaning?
So that's, I think, I think that Jordan Peterson has made an error there. Because Jordan Peterson's error is that Jordan Peterson recognizes the significance of the maybe the contribution of Christianity to the way that we live, right? But if we have this sort of telescoped landscape, it also includes, why does monotheism exist? Well, because of the ancient Sumerians and the Egyptians.
But see, that's played into, I think, what he was saying, going through the whole part of the book, it was an evolution, right? With the Sumerians, the Egyptians, Buddha and Christ, and like whatever.
To Sam Harris, then, you are a Christian is the wrong focus. What he should say.
I think it's more like that. That actually is, to me, semantics. It's more like you're a part of. You're living Christian theology to a degree, as in that these people call them Christians. It doesn't actually mean you're religious. I'm just saying, like you're just as you were living the Sumerians and the Egyptians thought. This is evolutionarily where we are.
It's misleading to say that in that context. So there's a conversation they were having, and in that
because of how people would perceive it, though, not because of its untruth. I mean, people like.
But then Sam Harris could say to Jordan Peterson, yeah, but you're living in the context of the civilization that preceded Christianity, which actually invented individualism.
Correct. He's saying is that this is the next evolutionary step, because he talked about the Sumerians. I forget the names of the two deities, the mother and the father deity, and the character, the Christ, whatever character that did whatever he did, and then that went to the Egyptians. The Egyptians applied beliefs like that, but they made it individual instead of just the king and the king's son being able to do it. It was all people could be part of the afterlife. And then Buddha had basically a similar Christ thing. It's about taking into And then basically all he was saying is that Christ was the last evolution of these two ideas, and that nobody's updated it since. The only people that tried to were the alchemists. Only in that they wanted to make some kind of unified theory between physical matter and.
I think we can get to alchemy. So on that point, it's right to say that the culture that so anybody who says, for example, if you hear an atheist like me say, I invent my own morals, it's nonsense. Right? Because you don't sit down and say, okay, the moral number one, the moral number two. You don't do that. You inherit your morals from the moral landscape that you're born into. It seeps into you. It seeps into you over time, and the over time part, it sort of seeps in through these layers, these sedimentary layers of the telescoped past. But to pinpoint it and say, okay, that one's from Christianity and that one's from the Sumerians and that one's from the Egyptians, is ridiculous. So the statement of you are actually a Christian is the misleading thing. It's not.
I would agree with you, but I think his point was that it was an evolutionary improvement. Like, there were base ideas. It was sedimentary, but we're at a different. Well, I mean, it's sedimentary. There's no hierarchy in sediment except for height. Yeah. But he was saying that there was an actual improvement where one thing used to apply just to the king and the king's son, and then the peasants would follow it. He's saying now, it's all on all people, and that people who want to play out being the hero, they follow the hero character Christ. Whereas maybe the alchemists, they were trying to improve it again by then being Christ themselves, by transmuting matter into something else and themselves into something metaphysical.
I think he does himself somewhat of a disservice when he focuses in his public speaking on too much on Christianity, because hold on a second. In the book, he really lays out a great case for this. Could basically the idea of, listen, this concept could take on many different forms, whether it's the Buddha, whether it's Christ, whatever. The main concept here is a concept that is technically theoretical, but when applied and when followed, or when people really grasp it, it provides a good model for moving things forward personally, individually, and culturally. And the idea is, as I said before, you grow up in your tradition, you understand your tradition, and then in your capacity as you become a being in the world that is responsible, you move into chaos and you pull something out of chaos, because chaos is the birth.
See, I think you're thinking of it overly practically, because he's not trying to. I don't know.
That's the primary idea, though. It's not about. It's not a Christian. It's not a Christian book.
No, it's not. I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying. See, I think you're getting
pull universals out of it. You know what I mean?
I don't think Jordan Peterson is actually a Christian. I don't think that he's preaching Christian things. I think a Christian could listen to this and just throw out Christianity. I think he's making a pretty good empirical argument for the course of history, and how the course of history has led to different myths improving themselves. It's like an evolutionary myth chart from where it started. Sure. And how it got more complex. So when I say
you want to explain the innovation of Christ, I mean, he does go into that in some depth, which is an interesting chapter. Do you want to talk about that?
I don't know how well I can explain it, but I mean, it goes back to how it went with the Sumerians. The whole mother and father and son character either fighting with one of them against the other and actually succeeding or transcending to some new idea based on their own.
My understanding of the innovation of Christ was the creation of the individual as the primary deity. In other words, what I mean, so basically, rather than the king as a deity or anything like that, and deity I mean sort of very generally, right. Christ invented the idea that Christ created the idea that when I say that I understand the codes, the Jewish code, I understand the tradition, but if I want to work on the Sabbath or heal on the Sabbath, I will do that because, in a way, as an individual, I understand when I should do that. I am able to transcend tradition.
It was just another evolution. The idea of the law was good and well, but the application of the law was actually against its purpose. So he came along and said the law is actionable. You can do it all the time by being a better person now, not just by holding up.
So right, it's an embodiment of the law. So Christ's contribution in the book is an individual embodiment of the law, which transcends the traditional understanding of the law, not the letter of the law, which is, you can't do this on Saturday. Yes, but I'm embodying the law and I understand it more deeply, so I'm able to move it forward. And that's the contribution. So it sort of takes the letter of the law and sort of brings it down into the level of the individual to say that each of you needs to be able to embody the tradition such that when you need to, you can transcend it and reach into chaos and pull out of chaos the next innovation. I think you're absolutely right.
I think that's well said. I think that's the point of the book in that part. You're right.
Right. To reach forward, bring out of chaos the thing that will take you to the next level. Because as soon as you say, nope, it's tradition. No, it's tradition. Then you become. Then you start to. Then you're the.
So he did. I mean, yeah. So he said by following the hero, which the hero at that point is Christ. That's how you do that, which is what you're saying.
Right. Yeah.
But I think,
But as soon as I heard that, I thought, well, geez. I mean, these strict constitutionalists who say that the gun control laws can never be changed. We can never do anything. Are a little bit. They are the sort of totalitarians of the Constitution, and if we embody the principles of the Constitution, then we can make amendments that make sense in our era when we have AK-47s and we have drones and we have nukes, which is a different time. If the Founding Fathers came to our time and saw that we had nukes, they would say, why have you not changed anything? What is wrong with you people?
I completely agree, but on another side, where Jordan Peterson, it's confusing with him now in popular culture and his place in it. is he obviously sets, like we talked about before, he sets up these paradigms of the father who has all these rules and the chaotic mother, the wild nature.
Can you explain that, because that's pretty central in the book? I mean, the knower, the known.
What are the names
chaos.
of them in the Sumerian religion? Because he went over that like 10 times, but I didn't remember them. Tiamat
is the mother of chaos.
Tiamat.
Tiamat, and
Marduk is the son.
Marduk is the hero.
Dad?
And then his father is, I don't remember.
Well, I don't remember. I mean, there's always in the story, like they already achieved something and they became the king, right? There's always like a beginning to that. But anyway, he's the king at that point. He controls everything.
Marduk is the king.
Right. The mother just traditionally embodies like the wild chaos of life, like the beginning and the end, all the unknown, the wilderness. The father is
also the source of life.
Yeah, the source of life. But the source of life is in chaos, and so is death too. Which it's interesting. But the father is just the fundamentals, the rules, the authority, and then the offspring. Oppression, yeah, and authoritarian, like so authority in a bad sense, just as it could be in a good sense. Yeah. The offspring of those two is the son, Marduk.
Marduk, yeah.
Right, who faced with a certain situation has to war against either one of them. I think. I don't know how. I forget which one he fought against. I think he fought against the mother, right? And the father ended up.
It wasn't his mother, was it? It was a female.
Another female force who was evil.
Yeah, and he had to fight her, and her pieces became the universe.
Right. Well, I mean, it's the same. Like Native American traditions are like that too. There's a lot of things he didn't even talk about that are exactly the same.
So that comes. Yeah, I mean, I have a criticism about that, but
anyway, what I was going to say though is how this relates to him. Like, well, I mean, you could say the same thing for like the Christ story or Buddha. Buddha's father was, rigid and structured. I don't know if
create a landscape of known things for him. Yeah.
Right. Whereas Buddha keep running into these things that were new to him that he wanted to experience. Each time he got maybe depressed about them, went back to his enclave, and then came out again to seek that. Eventually, he goes into the place where he's was it Nirvana? What's he?
So
he goes into the wilderness. He goes. Oh, that's where the mother part comes in. He goes into the wilderness.
Right, so it's not a female thing. It's just the wilderness. It's the unknown. It's the
which it traditionally is female.
So, well, that's something that we shouldn't take for granted. So for anyone watching this who says, "What father, mother was?" So,
I'm sorry,
in a lot of mythology, and in this book, one of the primary assumptions about mythology is not assumptions. One of the primary concepts behind the hero is the fact that there is the feminine and the male, the female, the male. The female embodies two aspects. The male embodies two aspects. There's a positive and a negative. So the female is chaos, it's disorder, it's death, it's also the source, but it's also the source of life. It's also so it embodies a positive aspect. The male, the father is.
It's a potential.
It's potential. It's future potential. Whereas the father represents the male, which is potentially order, which is society, which is rules. What is also, though, oppression.
Might keep you from doing something stupid, right? I mean, protect you. It's
preventing you from going into the unknown, or rules that impede progress. And so they're set up as equals. The yin-yang symbol represents both sides of.
Yang is male, yin is female, right?
Right, exactly. And the sun and the moon is the same thing. The moon is female, and the sun is male. And that's a.
So anyway,
the hero threads the needle between the two.
Who's the guy? I always forget if it's. It's one of those guys, one of those Greek guys, about talking about the difference between the vice and the virtue. You have to walk the line between vice and virtue. What I'm talking about? Is it Aristotle? It's either Aristotle or that other guy. I know there's another guy. Is it Aristotle? It's one of those two guys, Aristotle or Plato. He talks about the it's like morality lies somewhere between vice and virtue. There's a vice and virtue to all aspects of life. Yeah. Anyway, so just talking about all that, there's always the the mother and the father, and there's the born son in the middle that has to deal with these things and find a way between them to a better light. And he probably has to go into the wilderness to find some new truth. So, Buddha did that, Christ did that, etc., on through history, down through the Sumerian myths. But I'm saying in new Jordan Peterson, like in current culture, he seems to always be with the authoritarian father. Does he not?
He does. He comes across that way. You mean in Jordan Peterson, the man?
Jordan Peterson, the man. Jordan Peterson, the crusader for helping people fix their lives, and just rightly so, and I'm sure he has helped a lot of people. He doesn't seem to be telling people to be Marduk. He seems to be saying, listen to your dad.
Right. Yeah, I agree. So
what's the deal with that?
Contradictions in that. I mean, this book is a brilliantly written book, probably flawed, but very well thought out, very interesting, very open to he explores a lot of things in a very fair way. And then as a person who does interviews and talks in public, he doesn't seem to quite get that depth across, and he seems to as you said, side with the
like when he's on the University of Toronto and these purple-haired people come up to him and they're saying, you're a Nazi, you can't do this or that. Is that not chaos, or a piece of chaos, like threatening the father? And why are they necessarily bad? Why is it necessarily good that the father should destroy them? Maybe they are Marduk. Maybe they are changing something. I mean, I'm not
right.
Yeah.
At least there's,
because he seems to take. And I understand why, because he's right in many ways. Like the base nature of human beings that end up choosing the easy route are not following the path of the hero, and they do stupid things like become Nazis and become Stalin, or just regular people who will hate their fellow human being. Which I got, and I get where
young turkeys, they're figuring it out,
Right. So I don't think he could actually just sit and condemn the whole movement against something. Like,
that's a very good point.
How is the capitalism as it is currently just? I get that he says it's better than things were before, but that doesn't mean it's perfect. I mean, that doesn't mean we don't need a Marduk or a Christ.
So I think that's a really, really good point. I mean, putting the book aside, as a person, he does encourage people to take on responsibility and to stand up and assume the mantle of a person active in the world rather than hiding, which is an aspect of that. But yeah, as you said, if he's gonna just in an interview condemn an entire movement, whether it's the social justice movement or whatever, and rather than maybe see what he can extract from it and play with it a little bit, then it's going to make him look like he's tradition. He is tradition.
Fine,
he
don't just dismiss like, well, you're
definitely Mr. Tradition.
you're completely wrong, and I get that they're obviously very angry. They're probably mostly wrong, and they're definitely against free speech, which is wrong. But you could say, but also you really have a point. And I'll tell you, this is what you should do.
Explore the point. Explore the point. Yeah. So I think this is a stylistic thing on Jordan Peterson's side, is that he tends to, in his personality, naturally favor that, and it's hard. I think hard for him to resist. I think he understands maybe that he probably should play with it a little bit, and if he were Joseph Campbell, he probably would say, well, let me think about that, and play with it a little bit, or Carl Jung. Those two dudes are at a higher level. Jordan Peterson is the dark reflection of those guys.
Right. Well, I don't think a dark reflection is that bad either, because darkness is pretty true in a lot of ways about reality. So all the things he says in his book they're good stuff. They're things people should think about. But in his actions in life, he doesn't seem to be. I mean, that's just another story of human beings don't ever live up to to what their ideas.
Jordan Peterson let me down.
Here's one of my criticisms against Jordan Peterson, as people that say Jordan Peterson is Christian or something, and it's something I believe as a person that I would say I'm not a Christian just because I don't like the organized religion part, but I'm obviously a Christian as far as believing in Christ.
You like Jesus, yeah.
Yeah, I like Jesus, but Jordan Peterson has always been somebody that talks about Christianity, but he never talks about like faith. And I would think the same thing is true of this book. He examines all the positive aspects of Christianity evolutionarily, as we're talking about how myth making goes. But I think he negates that, like, the one thing that makes that thing effective as far as the person that believes in myth is the faith element. It's not the empirical delineation or examination of an object. He's picking these things apart empirically, and he makes very good
Maybe that's
work
an
of it.
implied thing, though, because if you are going to adhere to a tradition, you're going to have faith in that tradition, because belief is the thing that drives one to adhere to anything traditional.
I'm just saying,
might be sort of implicit in
I'm
that.
just saying, if there was a Marduk or a Christ person, the thing that's necessary is not a well-reasoned understanding of all the elements. It would be a blind faith jump into the abyss with good intentions, with the right intention.
I think that's sort of something that, I don't know. I think that's something we can sort of take for granted, is that people who live in a culture take for granted in general, historically, people in a culture take for granted their historical context, and they take for granted their cultural context, which includes a belief system that they adopt as their own. They wear it as a mantle, and then, okay, we need to talk about moving forward and how you draw.
He talks about that a lot, just with culture in general.
I think it's kind of assumed. The thing that frustrated me was that I think he focused too much on Christianity. What about Native American belief systems? What about I don't think he delved deeply enough into other traditions. Mm-hmm. He understands the Buddha. He understands that story pretty well. Why doesn't he focus on it more? And why, when people ask him, this is a personal gripe, but why in public doesn't he say, well, the Buddha is a great blah, blah, blah. There's a great historical example.
Okay, yeah.
Maybe not historical even, but there's a great parallel between Christ and Buddha, and you could pull from either. What's the focus on Christianity for?
So there, I completely agree. Like you said, they were contemporaries, right, or nearabouts.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
He could be pulling from Buddha. The only thing I would say about like Native American mythology would be that it's probably equivalent to like Sumerian stuff with the father and mother. It's more, it's not,
primordial version.
There's nothing wrong with it. I'm not saying anything against it. It's just he's talking about like what it means to culture at large, and obviously Christianity has meant the most to culture at large because we live in Western civilization. But he could talk about Buddha in relation to culture at large because it matters.
The parallel between Buddha and Christ is that the Buddha achieved enlightenment under a Bodhi tree, which parallels Christ being crucified on the cross, both on a tree-shaped thing that represents the world tree.
That's pretty interesting.
Right? So there's sort of.
What do you think about this stuff as an atheist? Like, what does it make you think to hear all this stuff, like this affirmation of mythology?
Well, I love it. I love mythology. I go to Catholic Mass quite often. I swim around it. I take it all as part of. I'm not the sort of atheist that wants to reject culture and.
Why do you still say atheist then? Like, if you're so open to these things?
Oh, because the meaning of an atheist is someone who believes that there is no actual God, which I don't. So I'm able to hold in my mind both the concept that as a human being, it's very important for a human being to understand the value of our mythology, our shared mythologies, to orient ourselves in the world by purpose, to understand our tradition, to even find direction in our tradition. But at the same time, logically, I'm pretty sure there is not actually any sky person out there somewhere who.
Well, why are you still getting like empirical about it and saying sky person after all this talk about mythology?
Because it's two different levels. It's the thing we always disagree.
I'm saying why are you saying like something the West Baptist, whatever, you know what I'm talking about, the Baptist church people? Why would you say sky person? I mean, who honestly thinks there's a sky person?
People believe that there's actually a being. Actually a God.
Yeah, but I don't think that people that think there's a being think that he's like a person in the sky.
Okay, let me say it differently then. I don't think that there is any actual, when people pray...
Like spiritual deity.
When people pray, Christians pray, right? I think when they pray, when they think thoughts, that prayer is being received by nothing in any sense. Zero things. Okay. And the only thing that it benefits is maybe themselves, their own lives, their own the meaning that they create for themselves. So I sort of, when you say how can you still be an atheist? Because I have sort of, the two levels are very clear for me. I have this love for religion, love for mythology, and the Hindu gods and Christianity, the symbolism of the Catholic Church, and all of that stuff is fascinating, and I love it. And I love to swim around in it and experience it. But at the same time, the concept that there is actually a deity out there that is actually, in the grandest possible sense, receiving prayers or watching over anybody is nonsense bullshit. So there's two different levels, right? And I'm able to live very happily in those two different levels. And so
yeah, I understand. I don't know how you could just say for a fact that you know that it's nonsense.
Well, an
bullshit.
atheist is not someone who knows for a fact. That's not the meaning of an atheist. That is not what an atheist is.
You just said it. I didn't say that you did.
It is. Okay. So it's sort of the same degree of nonsense bullshit that you would say. There's a great example of I can't remember, but there's a. Okay, do you think that there is a tea kettle orbiting the Earth?
I don't know for sure.
Do you think there is?
Like in space station or something?
Tea kettle. By itself in space.
I have no idea.
Orbiting the Earth.
No idea.
If you were to place a bet. Is there a tea kettle that's been orbiting the Earth and it's been there for all time?
Like in an old space station?
Nope, just a tea kettle floating around in space. It's been there.
Probably not.
Yeah, that's what an atheist is. Do you think that?
I feel like you didn't read the book.
No.
If you can go back to examples like that, we need to get off this topic because it's reducing the whole thing down.
No, it's not. It's just at two different levels. I'm able to experience the book in the same way that you are and enjoy it the same way that you are, but it's my sort of regular.
I guess not, because I feel like it actually has like real meaning to me.
This is where it always goes when we have this conversation.
That's what I'm saying. We need to stop. I'm not curious to have.
There's actually not actually a God out there. There's no way. Probably. I'm 99% sure.
Right.
99%. I can't be 100% sure because that's not possible.
Yeah.
I can't.
I'm an atheist for the rest of this topic.
I can't know that there's no God. It's not knowable, right? I can't know that there's no God, but I can be pretty damn sure. I can be pretty damn sure, very sure that there's.
Good.
I'm pretty sure that there's no pink tea kettle orbiting the Earth, right? I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong. It's possible, but I think it's pretty smart to say.
It's very interesting to me that after reading the whole book and like knowing what civilization came from, with the belief that there was a God, that you would equate the whole thing to a pink tea kettle. That seems a little arbitrary.
You're missing a big thing here.
I understand there's different layers to everything, but I'm not reading layers.
Now on the layer of human evolution.
The conversation there needs to stop. I'm going to use the restroom. We're going to talk about something else when I get back. Wow. I'm using the restroom. I just don't think it's not a good conversation. I don't think it's on the same level of what we were talking about before. You're becoming vehement about pink tea kettles, and I'm not interested.
I would say leaving the conversation is becoming vehement. So, just for anyone listening to this,
I said I wanted to stop that part of the conversation, and you're not stopping.
So I'm leaving. Okay. So, just for anyone still watching who has seen Gabe leave the conversation, I'm able to continue speaking, right?
No, I was saying I don't want to talk about like how stupid atheism or theism is. That's not what we're talking about right now. I understand that you say it's two different levels, but I think the pink tea kettle argument is very small compared to what we've been discussing.
That was just bringing in reality, like the objective empirical part.
That's what we're talking about. The book is talking about reality.
It's talking about humanity. There's two different levels. It's talking about humanity. The book is about humanity. The book is about human evolution, human culture, human meaning. And I accept it on all those grounds. But I'm able to separate that from objective fact. Is there a being of some kind out there in the universe that actually exists?
No, you're
obviously
you're being
of course not. So I'm just bringing in, hey, oh, by the way, this is probably true. There's no way there's actually a God. But this book is very interesting. I mean,
you're not thinking of being on anything except for the empirical level.
I'm just bringing that in for a second. That is something that's almost definitely true that there isn't an actual God out there. But we're not, in this conversation, we're not talking about an actual God. We're talking...
We weren't. I was certainly
We're talking about human evolution. We're talking about human culture.
You're going on an atheistic tirade.
Where humans derive their meaning. And I'm on board with all of it. All of it.
All right. I think you tried to affirm a certainty about your belief where nobody asked for it and it wasn't called for.
No, that's just where the conversation went. I'm not certain. There could be a God.
You said it was absolutely retarded and stupid for anybody to think otherwise, and I mean, you'd have to be an idiot. And that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about that.
It's almost certain.
From what point of view?
The conversation went there. I mean, I don't remember exactly how it went there, but the conversation went there.
I really have to pee.
You go ahead and pee. I might keep talking, and don't hold it against me.
All right.
So, I'll have to go back and watch the conversation. But my point here is, as Gabe goes to the bathroom, that there are two levels. There are two sides. On one side, you have the objective reality of the universe. On the objective level, on the actual empirical level, yeah, is there a Christian God? Is there an Egyptian God actually out there that's listening to prayers? No. But does that matter in the human context? Also, probably not, right? What we're talking about with this book is how culture has evolved and how people derive meaning, how people find purpose, where we get our sense of right and wrong, our sense of morality. And that's where I think the book has real value and real meaning. Hopefully we'll get to some of the gripes I have with it soon, but the main concept, the main idea behind it, the thrust of it, is the idea. Gabe must have closed the call. I'm not sure what happened. The main thrust of it is the idea that there's the hero, the myth of the hero, the archetype of the hero is a person who has grown up in their specific culture and has been sort of ensconced in it, immersed in it, and then they, as sort of embodying the ideals of their culture, go out into the unknown and into chaos, into a place that is uncertain. In Joseph Campbell's Hero of a Thousand Faces, or Hero with a Thousand Faces, fights a dragon or whatever, and then brings back something new.
I'm back. All right, so, it was my fault. It was my fault. I started by asking you, do you feel differently about it after reading the book? But once you started getting into the specifics of why you don't think so, I was less interested. Okay. So I see where we left off before, and that's...
Yeah, let's just stay on this. I will call it a level, because it is a level. The human level. It is the human level. We're talking about humanity. That's all we're talking about.
I'm talking about everything, but I don't. If we're going to argue about it, I don't want to care. So let's just go on to what we're saying about the book.
All right. Okay. So I wanted to just bring up one point, and then we can go on to something else about how this is sort of. I would really recommend reading Joseph Campbell's Hero with a Thousand Faces, because it's sort of like the light side version of this, because Jordan Peterson's main focus on the hero archetype, the person who walks the line between chaos and order, the person who goes into chaos and brings back something to improve civilization, is what the Hero with a Thousand Faces is about. That's the entire story in it. It lays out each point. It's more interesting probably than this book in this sort of... It's more fun to read because it's all anecdotes, it's all stories, it's all myths. Jordan Peterson gets into the weeds, and that's one of my criticisms, is that he doesn't... I think to really make something stick and make something a little bit more mass appeal, you have anecdotes, more stories. Tell me a story, and then I'll get the picture. And Joseph Campbell is all about story, and then I can, then tell me in one sentence.
Yeah, he has some stories. Sometimes there's stories like, well, my friend's son had a vivid dream.
Joseph Campbell's has
bed.
two types of stories. He's either quoting someone else, Right, another author like Jung or Campbell,
or his friend or his dad or himself.
Or it's a very, very specific personal example. Whereas Campbell, when you read Hero with a Thousand Faces, it's all just myths, and so it's like the light side version of this, and it's certainly a lot more fun to read.
I don't. That probably is. I mean, what's the outlook from that? Like, what is the point of that? Just that there is a heroic, mythic necessity in human beings.
It's interesting. You can make Star Wars after you read it. It's sort of it is really just he's not. I don't think Joseph Campbell's trying to lay out. I mean, generally speaking, yeah, okay, we should all be more like the hero and see how you can apply that in your own life, sort of. But it's more like anthropological. Trying to understand myth, and it's just that, and then you make of it what you want to make of it. If you're George Lucas, then you make Star Wars. If you're me, you just say, "Oh, well, that was interesting. I enjoyed that." You know what I mean? But
see, one of my other problems
is severe. He's talking about what happens when you fall off the razor's edge into the abyss and meet the devil.
Well, yeah, see, that's where I'm at. As an apocalyptic religious nut type, I mean, all religious people are, I guess, apocalyptic to a degree, right? I guess, but.
You have
it's weird. Yeah. Like an inverse quality, yeah. But I don't think that the inverse quality means it's untrue. Anyway, another issue I have with Jordan Peterson is it seems like it's in the same line of like, so there's these evolutions in mythology. They all lead to something better. Eventually, mankind is going to evolve again, right? There'll be like a new Christ, or there'll be another evolution. Maybe the alchemists were trying to do it. They did not succeed.
I have something to say about that, but yeah, go on.
Yeah. Anyway, but the moral of the story is that it is still like a hopeful arc, I think. Actually, I don't think it's that dark. I think he
focuses on the dark moving toward the light, so I see your point there.
Yeah, there's an eventual hopeful arc for humanity, which maybe, I guess. I don't know. Could be.
I agree. I think he wants us to move toward the good and toward the hopeful.
Right.
But ultimately, the most of the examples along the way.
Well, he's saying it by shouting, "You're actually evil, and you need to stop it."
Right.
Which is actually it really is true. I mean,
he's drawing a picture of heaven by actually sketching all of the shadows around it.
Which is helpful. I mean, because not many people are saying that. Yeah, because I think most things that people try to do that are just positive, they end up being something like Star Wars. And how helpful is that? It's just Star Wars. All it is another like.
It's a heck of a movie.
It's entertaining as heck, but it's not going to stop you from being a Nazi. Because look at all the people who like Star Wars now. A bunch of Nazis.
On the other side, though, who's going to read this book? You know, I think someone could interpret the ideas and make it a little bit. You could make a powerful film that sort of incorporates the ideas from this book to lay out the case that's being made in a more manageable, sort of bite-sized way. That would be useful for people. I mean, this is it's very academic in the way that it's written, and it's not very approachable for most people.
Yeah, those first like that first third with all the chapters, all the Piaget stuff, the clinical psychological studies and proofs and stuff. I was just like, it's interesting, but I guess I also, I get it. It's all that for me. Like the only thing that I care about is the why. All the how stuff just gets really boring, and you can build a car, whatever. You use tools. This is how you do this. Who cares? Was Mushroom over there?
Yeah,
what are you looking at? You got a cat over there?
Mushroom's looking at me. She wants me to.
Yeah, we're almost done, right?
This conversation. But Mushroom, we have a little bit more to talk about.
Just a little bit. We got to get to those other points you have.
A few more points, Mushroom.
Hey, Mushroom.
Hi. Mushroom. Hi. Mushroom said, "Hi."
That's nice. I want to see Mushroom.
He needs to go to New Jersey to work.
That sucks. New Jersey's the worst place in the world.
New Jersey's the worst place in the world.
You know what they do over there?
You know what they do?
You heard about what they do?
What do they do, Gabe?
These what are those animals called again?
They beach whales. They have a special thing.
No. There's the other ones. What are they, manta rays or eels that they eat? Remember?
They eat raised mushrooms. He eats steamed mushrooms.
No, but we were talking about this. Chris Christie slurps
Chris
them up
Christie
like
eats
back
steamed
What?
No. Lampreys.
Lampreys.
Suckerfish.
I knew that. Cory Booker's friends are all lampreys. Even the real ones.
Chris Christie eats a lamprey every morning for breakfast. Not enough. I need another.
When you're coming into New York and you have to pay $15, it's because you don't have a lamprey in there. And there's a surcharge.
Lampreys in that cooler back there? I need to come check it. I'm going to have to confiscate these lampreys.
Doesn't really make sense.
Gubna. The Gubna.
These are all going straight to Chris.
And these lampreys, we are a little low on our lamprey quota, and we're being punished. Our salary is being docked because of this, and we have to bring more lampreys.
You think you could pay 15 lampreys instead of dollars if you go across the bridge?
Probably, yeah. With Chris Christie's insatiable need for lampreys.
They have a little SeaWorld style slide with the water going down it. They throw them on there. They just go right into his mouth.
Exactly. He's got a tank. And when he joneses,
in his belly,
he partakes. It's a surgical hole that goes directly into his stomach.
Saltwater tank in one of his bellies. Keeps the lampreys in there until he eats them.
He doesn't eat them if they go directly into his belly, though, right? The acid kills him slowly. He likes the feeling of them wriggling around.
Chapter in this book.
Yeah, the lamprey chapter.
A lot of meaning there, Jordan Peterson.
Well,
yeah, another point.
What were we talking about?
Covered the excess of Christianity. We've covered the.
I wanted to mention something, though. I wanted to mention something that is very important about about alchemy. Oh no! This is what I wanted to say. So here's the thing that I realized that he didn't say directly. That I would like to know what you think about this.
Sure.
So, alchemy was this way to try to improve Christian thought and perfect the individual, and also sort of in practice perfect metals or bring them toward closer to a gold state. Right? Anybody who thinks alchemy is just about making base metals gold is incorrect. There's a much deeper philosophy in alchemy of perfecting yourself and bringing yourself, in the same way, changing yourself to become more pure.
They're all about the Ouroboros as well. They just saw it differently, not just a cycle of life, but a cycle of improving the state of the metal and themselves.
Sort of out of alchemy, out of the concepts of alchemy, were extracted the principles of empiricism, as though they were sort of the things that were siphoned off of alchemy. Oh, wait a second. We've learned some things along the way, sort of like the moon mission. When you travel to the moon, you learn about
get a cell phone or two
technology. Yeah, exactly. You siphon things off of it. So along the way, there's this obsession with alchemy, and the people who are doing alchemy who never achieve the alchemical dream are still gleaning things personally, meaning and purpose, and this sort of feeling of trying to move toward perfection and improving themselves, but also then we can extract.
I think I can see your question coming.
Modern empiricism, and then so we have modern empiricism. Now we have learned about the universe. We've learned about how things work, but now we have mass shootings, and we have disease in society, mental disease in society. We don't know what our meaning is. We don't know what our purpose is. So will we have? And then you have people like Terence McKenna who talk about psychedelic drugs being the way to potentially merge the empirical and the alchemical dream once again and move towards sort of this future ideal. Do you think that there is sort of we're in a phase, an empirical phase, and in the future we have the next phase is sort of the merging, the merging of the alchemical dream and the empirical without losing the empirical or the alchemical, sort of bringing them together, and maybe in 500 years we become far more in touch with our deeper selves, and Jung becomes the hero of the 24th century or something like that. You know what I mean?
And Peterson will be his lackey up there behind him. It'll be like, but I do. I'm sorry, Jordan Peterson, if you're watching. You're not a lackey.
I think he would.
You're a good guy.
Admit that he's.
I like you a lot.
He's a second to. I mean,
he's a saint.
McKenna and Peterson and Joseph Campbell, all three of them are Jungian.
Just to go back to what you were saying, I do think empiricism is like an offshoot of the branch, or like of the trunk of the tree
Mm-hmm.
going up from this history. Once you're out there on the limb, there ends up being an endpoint, and there's really nowhere to go, at least
What's the
meaning
endpoint then?
Huh?
What's the endpoint?
The end. I mean, you could just devolve into nothing, right? If you follow a certain trail too long, you could just become completely pointless to live.
Why is empiricism inherently, if you could just lay it out a little bit, why is empiricism inherently not something
Well,
that can
just talking
carry
like
us forward?
the how and the why. Empiricism is the examination of what is in its measurables, and the measurables are always limited by the knowledge of the person measuring. So if the person measuring isn't trying to find not just a new way to measure, but a reason to measure, and then then you're just going to have a dead end.
It's not actually a philosophy. It's not actually
It's not.
a way to
No,
live.
no. It's a tool. It's mistaking a tool for. Like I said about one time, I think we had an argument, and I said the car is empiricism. Going to work is like the reason I use the car or something. I didn't say it about empiricism.
No,
it was about
I
the
don't
how
think I
and why.
disagreed with that, did I? Because I agree with that.
No, I don't think so. But
That's true.
just saying,
That's right.
there's a how.
Science is only
why
a tool.
everything.
Science is a tool. It's nothing more.
Empiricism is very much about a how, and the why is the reason to use the tool. Like, why do I even need the tool in the first place?
Right.
A lot of people can get distracted by the tool and make all kinds of crazy shit, but that doesn't actually end up. I mean, it'll get you somewhere, but it might not get you somewhere good.
Yeah.
So yeah, there needs to be a balance, and we're definitely lacking that now. I'm not sure if alchemy is the way, but
well, I'm not saying alchemy specifically, but sort of the alchemical concept of
yes.
of wanting to. I mean, the alchemical dream.
That's what he talked about in the end there. It was interesting. Like, they were people that were very fundamentally Christian, but they also saw the flaws in themselves, and even maybe some ways in their own ideology or their religious beliefs that they weren't satisfied with. So they were trying to find both physical and metaphysical means to improve both of them. Like, they were actually searching in a real way for something.
Right.
They failed, but it was a noble pursuit.
They were heroes in the sense. The
Yes.
hero is someone who, even if they never attain the actual goal, even if they never actually bring something back, the pursuit of it is the thing that gives meaning and purpose. The pursuit of it, moving forward into the unknown, is a way to derive meaning and stay out of and
yeah. Like I said, my
away
one
from the sort of the orthodox.
The only thing, like, all this stuff is so tricky and so slippery too, because the one thing I worry about, even if I wonder whether or not it's true, is like, is it necessary to be that hero without having like some sort of weird true faith? Like, you could apply it to anything. It could be like somebody that believes like acid is the way. They're the Terence McKenna follower, and they believe it even more than he did. They're
DMT.
like, imagine if Terence McKenna is the fundamental father and the rule maker, and they're going to be like even crazy. Like, they're saying he's full of shit. He was a lightweight, and I'm going to just do something completely insane all the time, forever, and I'm going to have complete faith in this thing and find a new place or something. Not that I don't know what Terence McKenna says enough to say that could ever be true, but you know what I mean.
I take your point. Yeah.
Yeah. But then we have people doing stuff like that, but they're doing it now in the wrong name. Like, I'm sure anybody that takes it upon themselves to do something terrible in the name of an ideology, they have faith as well. Faith is like definitely a problem where it's in the wrong place. Like, wonder how many other Christ-type people were stoned or killed, a bunch of apostates, right? I mean, the name apostate doesn't come from nowhere. Not everybody got to be the Christ. You know what I mean? Not just Christ. In any religion, there's always apostates.
Right.
There's always people doing things wrong. You're not always,
The example of Jesus coming back during the
talking about the Dostoevsky story.
Yes, that was a good story to share. It brings me to I think that we both are pretty in line with how we feel about the book, but I want to go into some of my critiques, some of my criticism, and
sure.
Maybe you can talk about yours, because I don't think it's good to be. I don't like fanboying anything. You know what I mean? I think that everything should be considered. You should be able to say something bad about everything that you like. I enjoyed the book. I have issues with Jordan Peterson. sometimes. I think is a very great book to read, because I think it lays out a case for something that nobody talks about. And I think it's mostly insane that Jung is a disregarded character in psychology and in the history of the 20th century. Jung, man, I've now read 2 books by Jung.
Yeah.
And not only are his ideas fundamentally, every time he makes a point, it's, oh my God, that's got to be true, right? It's sort of like that. The issue is that he didn't, in the traditional way, scientifically verify everything, right? Because it's the science of the mind which is fundamentally misunderstood. So I think Jung is in this interesting place of being right about a lot of things, but also disregarded because of the space he's in, right? And what's traditionally accepted is, the brain scans and drugs and things like that, and dreams are disregarded. And so it would be a tragedy, I think, if Jung were not credited in the future for more of a contribution, because everything I've read, it seems true. And also far more interesting to read than Jordan Peterson in terms of just the way that it's written. I know it's a translation still, but it's
that's interesting, because I
just can't get enough. Like, it's delicious, everything.
Right. I know what you're saying about his writing style, because at first, sometimes because you're listening to an audiobook, you don't know what's quotational. And then he starts quoting some famous author, and then eventually you learn, oh, okay, I know where Jordan Peterson started up again.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like a linguistic, somebody doing an argument, or they're doing their
exactly. It's severe. It's the word that
thesis about something, right? It's so proper,
Severe.
So I think it was a little bit overwritten in that way. There's not much art to it.
Okay, well that's the thing I would say is Jung, Campbell, both of those guys are a blast to read. When I read both of them, I think,
down for a blast.
Ooh,
I got
great.
some sunglasses.
I just enjoy it. I love it. It's great. It's fun, right?
So yeah. How much does Audible cost?
It's $14 a month. It's worth it.
If we do an Audible, this is going to be the only Audible advertisement ever that wasn't paid for. I'm just actually asking questions.
Audible is the thing that I would give up after giving up food. Wait a second. I think I wanted to mention one more thing.
Oh.
I wanted to mention my critiques. So, stylistically, I think it's severe. That's once. 2, scope of cultures. I think he focuses too narrowly, and I think he could explore much more. He could go much wider. 3, I think that there's an emphasis on Christianity that I think is a little bit overdone. I understand why, because he thinks that's sort of the pinnacle of
the
invention of the individual. I understand that, but I think there's a little bit too much focus on that. He could have explored Buddhism more. I think with the point of a lot of his points could be made more succinctly when he's talking about the motivational significance of things, and he's going into details with the rats and how they explore where they live, and when they see something new, a mouse comes into a new landscape and sees something new, all of that stuff, I could say that in a couple of paragraphs. I think he feels like he felt like he needed to say that in excessive detail.
Yeah. Okay.
So he could have made the book about half as long, I think. I could have done it.
Well, see, the parts I didn't like were I think it's because he was working in an academic setting, and he probably wanted it to be fireproofed against academic critique. So he probably had that.
I mean that on all counts. I mean that in terms of, I think he spent too much time on everything. I think he could have said everything in a simpler way, in a shorter way.
I didn't find anything going overly long. A little bit, maybe. Okay, I'd say maybe you could cut it down 20%. The whole scientific stuff, I get why it's there, but
no, I think all of it is necessary. But I think he could have. I think he could have been more succinct in terms of style.
I think he has an overdependent. The only thing about it is it might be future-proof that way, too. I said fireproof, and I said future-proof. I'm not really very original. Sometimes I hear a word, and I just I add a different word in the front.
Petersonian in your unoriginal.
You ever listen to David Lynch talk? Somebody wrote a whole article about how David Lynch has a very limited range of vocabulary. When he says everything very specifically, words he's heard before. And he's a great filmmaker. He's more about images.
He's not a man of
Not
words,
about
and
words,
that's
because
okay. Because why
words
does everyone have to be a man of words? It doesn't matter.
words are a lie.
Yeah.
And that's why I make films and paintings with words in them. That's what's so interesting about David Lynch. He hates words so much that he makes films, and he makes the most amazing, beautiful films. And then his paintings all have words in them that say something.
Well, I think
Sorry,
there's a place for
it's
that.
really off topic.
No, I mean words. So words are very low bandwidth.
Yeah, they are.
Language, verbal language especially, is very low bandwidth. It's amazing. I mean, if you were to visualize all bandwidths of communication, a painting would be like a tsunami coming at your face, and words would be like a tiny little stream of atoms going into your ear hole. You know what I mean?
It's like true of almost everything. Just thinking about like even watching a good film, you still don't get what it is to be in the place. Like there's so much bandwidth lost, right? You're getting like watching a MP3.
Well, that's what's going to happen with I mean the next interface of technology is
VR?
brain to machine.
VR
Elon,
phones?
brain to phone. I mean,
Yeah,
right now, this is the lowest bandwidth thing on the planet, and this is what we use to search the vastness of the internet. A goddamn thumb, right? It's absurd. If you could think, for example,
yeah, but see,
I want
like
to know the answer to this question, and
crazy
it's just
people
there.
like me that believe in like religion and stuff, they think there's a higher band. And me and Marianne Williamson
Yeah.
together
Yeah,
with our togas on and whatnot.
Your togas and your
We got
orbs.
we have 19 salt lamp crystals around, and we
Yeah.
communicate at a very high bandwidth.
In a gondola.
And we continue to do so. But anyway, it's really off topic. Final summation of the book. I think it's a very good argument for the existence of good and evil and the necessity of myth to the human being, and a decent warning against what ignoring such things will lead to, and a good critique of what empirical thought without the consideration of aforementioned things would lead to.
I mean, a good tome on what it means to be too adherent to your own dogmas means.
Yes.
Meaning, with it, I mean the
yes, and having said all that, I think the implications are that to be a future Marduk, to be a future Christ, would take a level of faith and breaking of tradition that, first of all, he opposes in his real life, and second of all, is so dangerous that you're most likely going to be wrong and be another example of evil, as was mentioned previously.
Yeah, even Christ Take Two is considered evil by in the Dostoevsky.
Yeah, it is. It's considered evil, but I guess the evil depends on the outcome. But anyway, yeah. The thing that kind of scares me is just I feel that the future evolution requires a leap of faith that requires faith, and then faith usually will end up leading to evil because it ignores like all the rules of the Father, but then the Father will prevent the leap of faith. It's just so tricky that nobody really knows. So there is no answer. There's no like set path that you can walk. It's more like
he should have laid that out. Is that a criticism that he should have?
It's not
been a little
criticism,
more
I guess. No,
laying out a path forward.
It's not, because I think the path forward maybe is better walked having known these things.
Right. That's what I took from it. Sort of like, these are things to keep in mind. Now, I'm going to let other people do what they want with it. You know what I mean? I'm trying to understand past things. I'm not trying to tell you. Yeah.
It's interesting that like we talked about the first points of his development of character and what got him to think what he thinks and talk about what he talks about. He, even after having gone through this, he is always stuck at phase 2, overly socially, politically conscious, and wondering about the affect of things. And now he just goes around, like we talked about, being the father, preaching against. I guess he's just trying to prevent harm, but
well, he thinks.
So I think his heart's in the right place. It's just. I think so. Yeah. It's not as enlightened as his book.
I think it would have been better for him also. This is a critique. It would have been better for him to use fewer explicit quotations and excerpts from specific works, and more descriptions of things from a wider range of sources. In other words, he specifically gives long excerpts from Solzhenitsyn, from Jung, from Nietzsche.
I like those.
And I kind of did too, but comparing it to Joseph Campbell, who's just talking you through them in his own words from a much more diverse sort of field of players, is much more interesting. So he could have gone from the Gulag Archipelago to Nazis to Pol Pot, and he could have explored the landscape of totalitarianism better.
But I mean, isn't it? I mean, once you've got the point, you've got the point. I mean, I don't need to hear about any more totalitarian.
I'm also about the style. This is a stylistic criticism. This is not a criticism.
I guess. I mean, that would have made it even more long-winded. He could have made it like, I wish you would have made it 50 hours long.
Okay, why don't you just read the audio book of Solzhenitsyn's Gulag Archipelago then? You know what I mean? That was I thought that sometimes.
Yeah, I don't know. He didn't actually read that much of it. He didn't read that much. He really didn't. I mean, the thing he talked about, I really like that story about the guy that was the guy in the camp that refused to bend.
But it's Solzhenitsyn who's saying that. It's not Peterson. Peterson's choosing that. So my point is,
yeah, I know.
Why not choose from a sort of array of sources of the same type rather than choose from one specific source? He sort of says, these are my guys. These are my guys. Jung's my guy. Solzhenitsyn's my guy. And Nietzsche's my guy. These are my guys.
I think you would be more right if it was more like that religiously. I don't think the historical. Yeah, okay, maybe. You could put a Pol Pot in there, or whatever. Rwanda. Who was the guy? I think he did. I actually mentioned him. Who was the guy in Rwanda? That bad guy from Rwanda.
Ah, yeah. Marlon Brando.
But he did mention him. It was Marlon Brando.
Marlon Brando from the Rwanda genocide. He mentioned it, but he didn't. So he did mention it, but he didn't focus on it. So there's an inordinate.
Charlie Sheen goes up the river,
inordinate amount of focus on Christianity as opposed to Buddhism, when they're laying out that parallel. It could have been more balanced. This is just a stylistic criticism.
These are all nitpicks, I think.
It's a nitpick.
I think, yeah.
But because I think the Buddhist story is more powerful, personally.
More powerful?
I think the Buddhist story is far more powerful than the Jesus.
Yeah, well, I see the Buddha story and the Christ story, they both have the self-sacrificial element, but I think the Christ one is more powerful because it actually has actual death, not just the return from nirvana, which I think is more interesting. It's more like it's lower.
Good. And I think the Buddhist story is more powerful because it happens within the lived realm. It happens in terms of being the bodhisattva who, within your lifetime, journeys to the darkest places, realizes that they're bunk, and then really goes to the finds enlightenment and then brings it back. I thought he
transcended life. He went to the next life.
He did, and then he brought it back as a bodhisattva. You know what I mean? He brought it back.
Yeah, but he was less self-sacrificial because he didn't actually die.
It's not about, because I don't think the self-sacrificial thing is as important as doing it in life. As making a discovery and bringing it back in life, right? So I think that the story of the Buddha is more interesting than the story of the Christ. Personally, I've always found it to be more compelling.
Well, I personally disagree.
Well, I personally think you're wrong, Gabe. Maybe you should go to the bathroom again, and I can rag on you while you're gone, Gabe.
Did you record while I shut my laptop?
I was talking as you shut your laptop down, yeah.
Were you trashing
There were no tinkling sounds. I wasn't trashing you. I was explaining my point further. You'll see it later.
Hey. Well, I think that roadblock should be cut out of the video because it was annoying.
Well, I'll send it to you, and if you don't want it to be in the video, then I won't post it. In the future, we're going to be live, though, and so there will be no option for that.
No cuts. Perfect for no audience.
That's what I say.
I think this video has our most potential for success because at least we're talking about something that some people will care about. Why don't you title it something like this?
Jordan Peterson's
Jordan Peterson book that nobody read.
The Jordan Peterson book that nobody read. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Or
Jordan
Peterson is wrong sometimes.
Well, that'll bring different types of people. I think it should be a review of the Jordan Peterson book that nobody read.
How about? Yeah. Okay. A discussion of the Jordan Peterson book or a review of the Jordan Peterson review? Yeah, it is a review.
I give it. 4.6 stars.
I give it a 4.4 out of 10. Out of 5.
Out of 10?
Out of 5.
That's trash.
I get a 4.4 out of 5.
Jordan Peterson, you suck. Move up back to Rwanda or Alberta, or wherever you came from. Get out of here.
I mean, everything that I've been interested in lately has really been pointing toward the same direction. Listening to Terence McKenna, listening to Carl Jung, listening to Joseph Campbell. I mean, Terence McKenna is also interested. The alchemical dream. I think that there's something missing from the empirical worldview that needs to be taken into account, and that there is, and I've kind of always felt that way, but never. Your
atheistic heart doesn't have enough carbs in its diet. He needs some.
Well, no, I've always had my own sort of glasses on for that sort of thing, but I just never had a until the last maybe year when I've started reading more of that kind of stuff, more of that material. I've never really had anything backing me up on it, and so I think that we definitely have to transition toward an empirically augmented version of the alchemical dream.
Do you like post-positivism? Karl Popper? It's basically, I think, the idea that there is positivism is basically acknowledging an absolute, but post-positivism acknowledges that there is an absolute that people cannot ever know because they live in a relative space. So it's like we're going for an absolute that exists. We recognize it exists because we recognize that something has to exist. But because we are relative or objective at best, we can only make quantifications about it. Basically, it's like I think it's like the best form of empiricism because it's like an empiricism with the recognition of the inevitable flaw of limitation. Yeah, post-positivism. Look it up. It's good stuff. Jordan Peterson.
I just try to look for the magic in the mundane. That's what I call it to myself.
You should just be a Christian, man.
What are you talking about? That's the least magical thing. That's sort of that's like eating chili peppers for every meal. You know what I mean? What about paprika? What about salt?
Why didn't you ever watch Twin Peaks? You just didn't like it the first episode?
I watched 3 episodes and I just didn't like it. Keep trying. You gotta keep trying.
Well, I think David Lynch said you could just watch the first 2 episodes, the last episode of season 2, the movie, Fire Walk with Me, and then season 3. Those are the only ones that are canon to him.
I'm gonna watch season 3. Because that's newer and it's shinier.
Yeah, it's very sparkly. It's been a good conversation, my bro.
Yeah, we'll have to. I mean, we might explore it more in the future, but I like the idea of. I mean, if we do, we'll do a part 2.
Yeah.
And
if you could, I don't know if I have the patience to listen to the Hero of 1,000, the Joseph Campbell stuff, because I don't care about the how as much, and which seems like that's just a bunch of examples. I don't care that mythology exists. It's not like mythology exists. I don't need a bunch of proofs. You know what I mean? I would probably prefer to listen to Jung.
I think you probably enjoyed Jung, and Jung. I think you'd like Jung.
Yeah, Jung and McKenna. So
get into some Terence McKenna.
I'll try that.
His angle. Everyone has their own angle. McKenna's angle is obviously psychedelic, but
trippy, bro.
Yeah, makes me want to do some shrooms.
Jordan Peterson says nobody knows what happens.
You gotta.
He talked about those shrooms in one of his videos, and that means so much.
All right, don't cry. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah, I think I was listening to the book for 5 hours that day, and I thought, wow, this is good. This is great. What a great guy. And he uploaded. It was actually an old video, so he's got a pass because I think his wife was sick at the time. He was super emotional. He was talking to the Catholic guy, Robert Barron, and he broke down in tears like 10 times in a single hour and a half video. Just every time I saw it, I just come on, stop it.
Stop
Just talk about it. Why do you have to get so emotional? It's embarrassing.
Yeah. Well, everybody has flaws anyway.